Does an $800 DAC really sound that much different than an $80 DAC? I get asked this question a lot. So today I sat down with the SML SU1 DAC that comes in at just $80 and compared it with the $800 denafrips Aries 2 DAC in order to determine how these DACs sound differently and whether or not it makes sense for you to spend a lot or a little when considering a DAC. Now, my goal with this video is to avoid telling you which of these DACs I think sounds better. I want to answer the original question, not with my opinion, but instead tell you what differences in sound, if any, I hear between the two DACs. If someone doesn't think an $80 DAC sounds any different than an $800 DAC, then giving you my opinion on which one sounds better is really a moot point. So today we're going to focus solely on how these units sound in relation to each other. Now, both DACs have plenty of reviews on YouTube, so we're not going to focus on differences in features. We're going to talk only sound. Let's jump into that next. Now, the first song I listened to was Country Squire from the album of the same name by Tyler Childers. And when listening with the SMSL DAC, I was immediately surprised by the amount of bass response that I heard. I didn't expect that from an $80 DAC. I was also surprised to hear the amount of reverb around Tyler's vocals. Also, during the song, there's a lot of sort of mini instrumental solos from piano or steel guitar and fiddle. And the SML DAC has a very analytical sound in the way that it pulls those solos out apart from the mix and really highlights them. If you were seeing Tyler live and the spotlight shone down on that steel guitar when it was playing the solo, that's sort of what this DAC does. It really just hones in on that sound and separates it from the rest of the mix while it's soloing. And then as it's done, it sort of drops back in. All of this was a lot more interesting to hear than if I was using, let's say, a CD player without an external DAC. Now, the $800 Aries 2 DAC is well known for a more analog sound. And when listening to this same song, what I noticed is that it presents the instruments in a much more linear fashion, which means that it very rarely highlights that sound like the SMSL does. So for instance, if you were to be seeing Tyler live through the Aries 2 DAC, you would feel like the mix is much more all together and that you're hearing everything all at the same time rather than instruments popping out when they're soloing. Now, the bass response is a lot more relaxed on the Aries 2. Now, this is kind of a stretch, but this is how I would sort of make a comparison between the two DACs in regards to Tyler Childers, okay? With the analytical sound of the SMSL, it would kind of be like seeing Tyler perform live on April 19th, while the Aries 2 with the more analog laid-back sound would kind of be more like seeing Tyler on 420. If you catch my drift there, then you catch my drift. Now, the other song I listened to is called Hell is Chrome by Wilco from their album A Ghost is Born. This feels like an intimate recording with Jeff Tweedy being very close to the mic, and the SML really brought those vocals into my living room. It almost felt like I could hear him breathing at certain points. Now again, the bass felt very much in my face in this recording, but at times I found that this highlighting of the bass sound actually drowned out some of the other instrumentation. Now, there's also a very strong guitar solo in this song by Jeff Tweedy. He really hits a lot of high upper register notes. And at times with the SML during that solo, I just heard a digital sheen that really made me want to get up and turn the volume down during that solo. Now, listening to the same song with the Aries 2 DAC, the bass was less punchy, but that actually allowed for me to be able to hear other instrumentation. For instance, in the song, there's a light organ part that occasionally is played behind Jeff's vocals. I missed hearing this organ part altogether with the SMSL, but could hear it with the Aries 2 DAC. Now, talking about that guitar solo again, with the Aries 2, I was able to avoid hearing any of that digital sheen that ever made me want to get up and turn the volume down. It never made me wince or felt uncomfortable to listen to with the Aries 2 DAC. And lastly, Jeff's vocals in the song with the Aries 2 DAC just sounded more centered between my speakers than it did with the SMSL. And interestingly enough, I think there's a little bit more detail in the Aries 2 DAC that allowed me to actually understand the lyrics better than when I was listening with the SMSL. Just a reminder, I'm not here to tell you which of these DACs I think sounds better. I just wanted in this video to determine if they sound different at their extreme price points of $80 and $800. And I determined that answer to be yes, there are sound differences. Now, this is important to me because we all as humans hear music differently. So the price tags are what they are. But if you're someone that loves punchy bass, you're going to think the SMSL DAC sounds better at $80 than the denafrips Aries does at $800. If you love digital music with a precise and analytical sound playback, again, the SMSL will probably appeal to you more than the Aries 2. However, if you're someone that spent a lot of time and a lot of money on your vinyl collection and your turntable and your cartridge, and you really love that warm sound, when you're thinking about dipping back into digital, the Aries 2 will probably appeal more to you and be a better investment at $800 because it's going to remove some of that digital sheen and sharpness that the SMSL had and allow you to listen to digital music a lot longer, which would remind you of your vinyl collection and just playing record after record after record. That's what the Aries 2 is most likely going to provide you. It also presents music in a way that never really over-highlights one instrument over the other, which may allow you to hear things in music that you haven't heard before. Now, one last thing, if you are someone that is just dipping their toes into the world of external DACs and you are stressed out about the idea of spending $800 on the Aries 2, let me tell you, the $80 SU1 DAC is an excellent place to begin. I think you're going to hear a lot of new and interesting things using that external DAC than you will with the internal DAC on whatever device you are using. It's just a great way to get started with DACs. So don't stress out about the 800, get in with the 80, start to hear new things, and eventually down the road, if you feel like upgrading, you can do so. I found external DACs to be quite the rabbit hole last year. And the thing that got me started digging in that rabbit hole is buying my first CD transport. That was the transport from Shit Audio. If you'd like to learn more about my experience buying my first expensive CD transport, you can do so by watching this video here.